Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here, and I'm so thrilled that our organizations have partnered together to tackle the gender equity issue that plagues the industry. I definitely had an interesting jump into the space sector, and so I'd love to share a little bit about my journey as well as tell you all about what we're doing here at Space Prize. So I would call myself, I would say, a diversity and inclusion advocate in the space sector. And that journey for me began in a slightly unconventional way. It started off with a screenwriting fellowship in college. So for a couple of years, I had this screenwriting fellowship where I would get funding to do ethnographic research on American values. And my last script was randomly inspired by this space camp jacket I got from a thrift store. And I ended up writing a musical comedy about two women from across the world competing for a free trip to space. And when I wrote that script, two main characters, they were these immigrant women. I really came to understand how difficult it would actually be for women with these attributes, being from foreign countries, being of color and such. Those demographics are not very well represented in the space sector. And so as I was doing my research on my characters, I decided, I wonder what could be done to actually fix this in the real world. So as a philosophy student, I decided to write my senior thesis about democratizing the space sector. Then the summer after I graduated, I took a big risk because although I felt really confident about my ideas and my peers were really encouraging me that these ideas should be shared in a broader spectrum, I didn't know anyone in the space sector. I didn't study any hard sciences in college, but I decided, let me give myself a summer to try and get a job, an opportunity in the space sector. And worst comes to worst, I'll go back into the world of entertainment where I had a number of connections. So I magically found myself at a space conference in Seattle, at a conference called New Space that's run by the Space Frontier Foundation. And when I was there, I was holding a door open, and that's when I met my first boss in the industry. We had breakfast the next day after I told him my paper, and he created an internship position just for me. And 3 weeks after that conference, I found myself moving to New York City to work at a blockchain venture studio that had just acquired an asteroid mining company. Lots of fun buzzwords there. So I really had a deep dive into some of the really unique projects that are being developed in the space sector. And within a year of me working in space, thanks to my advocacy efforts, I found myself speaking at the UN in Vienna about democratizing space at the World Space Forum. And I've had a pretty fun journey ever since. And I think the reason why people have been so receptive to the ideas that I've been sharing is that the need is so great. Most people outside of our beautiful space bubble don't recognize how invaluable the space sector is to the way in which our modern society functions. It impacts countless aspects of our daily lives. And the fact that the global population isn't properly represented in this sector, that's a problem to me. And I think everyone else agrees. But because of the difficult nature of working in space technology, launching a rocket is not an easy feat. It can be hard for company leaders and such to find the right ways to dedicate their efforts to tackle this problem, as they're simultaneously trying to do things that are seemingly impossible on a daily basis. And so I've been having the great pleasure of working with companies to help tackle this problem. And we've had the pleasure of doing that specifically. I have through Space Prize most recently. So here are some events that I've gotten to be at in representing my thoughts on queer culture in space, on gender equity in space, on the inclusion of non-spacefaring nations in the space sector. That's all very, very important to me. And I think we are genuinely making real strides in each of these areas when it comes to making the industry more inclusive. But right now, one of my main focuses is empowering women specifically to get in space. So only about 20% of the industry's workforce is made up of women. And less than 12% of all astronauts who have ever gone to space have been women. And so despite 60 years, decades of space exploration taking place, these numbers haven't shifted. The demographics that we see for the industry's workforce as it comes to women, those numbers have stayed stagnant the last 2 to 3 decades. And so we at SpacePrize believe that the problem lies in the pipeline. And that is why we've been working to launch some really exciting contests to get young women excited about all the possibilities that lie in the space sector. So SpacePrize was launched a year and a half ago. We're a little young, but we're doing a lot of fun work. We moved quite quickly the second we launched. And so we kicked things off with a competition here in New York City, where I'm based. We gave away a zero-G flight to one borough, to a girl in each borough in New York City. And so we gave away 5 zero-G flights, and we had some incredible opportunities for our 24 other finalists as well. And when we were developing the contest, we thought, yes, the zero-G flight, that's so exciting. That's a life-changing experience. But then we gave it some more thought, and we wanted to not just give these girls a one and done incredible experience. We wanted to have true impact and start to shift the way in which they view their potential place in space. So we included this aspect of mentorship as well. So each of our winners also got a year of mentorship from a leading figure in the aerospace sector. And then we gave them all kinds of other fun perks as the journey went along. We sent them to a space camp retreat in Huntsville, Alabama. We took them on field trips in New York City. We even put them up on a billboard in Times Square for a week, which was just incredible. And here you can see the caption says, "Let's talk gender equity in space." And lastly, we actually even had a private roundtable session about 5 months after the contest closed. And to me, we had a private roundtable session with the US ambassador to the UN. And during that session, the girls talked to the ambassador about the relevance of the Sustainable Development Goals as it relates to space. And interestingly enough, when we first launched the contest, we had, I would say, about half of the girls who participated were true space geeks. The other half were encouraged by parents, teachers, and the like to try and win the zero-G contest and get this amazing opportunity. And for that half where they had other motivating factors aside from their interest in the stars to join the competition, after 5 months of engaging with our program, these young women were able to describe to a high-level US ambassador the value of space, and we're able to have a meaningful, productive conversation about that. And that's exactly the kind of transformation we're trying to create at SpacePrize. So once we launched our New York City contest, we decided to launch a couple more in Paris and Portugal. And the winners of those contests, they actually just flew on a zero-G flight in France with a company called Nova Space just in February. And it was so incredible for us to be able to continue that journey in those countries. And now we do hope to be able to bring this competition to other cities, to other countries, and to more folks who don't typically have access to these kinds of game-changing opportunities. And I will say a zero-G flight to me was a life-changing experience. I actually got to fly with the girls in New York City, and we even brought out a Star Trek actress to join us as well. It was an incredible experience, and I'm excited for us to be able to bring this to other young women as well. And here you can see some of our girls at their space camp retreat there in Huntsville, Alabama as well. They had an amazing time. I wish I had something like this around when I was their age, honestly. And here's some photos from the zero-G flight. It truly was an incredible experience. And when you're floating around on zero-G flights, you really feel like a kid again. It's incredible. And so we at SpacePrize, we love the fun, flashy things of a zero-G flights and such, but we really want to help empower others to work towards our mutual mission of making the space industry more inclusive. And just want to share a couple of resources for you all in case you're unaware of what's being done in the public and private sector to make space more inclusive, at least here domestically in the US. So I'm a big believer that the future of space depends on diversity and inclusion. I think if we're going to tackle any of the problems that space touches, like climate change and such, we have to make sure that we have a ton of diverse voices at the table to have these conversations in an effective manner. And so here you guys can just see our current range of diversities when it comes to astronauts, which I say astronauts are definitely the top ambassadors of the space sector. And, earlier we got to hear from an amazing woman, Nicole Stott, who is represented in these demographics. And here you can see that we are making genuine strides, right, when it comes to representation in the space sector and in astronauts. And especially when it comes to what's happening in the commercial space sector, there's a lot of unique opportunities being given to people of color, to women, to really start to address the problems and such that took place when women and minorities were intentionally kept out of these kinds of opportunities in these rooms and spaces. And so to correct that, NASA has an amazing equity action plan. And there's so many resources when it comes to their Office of STEM engagement that you guys can all leverage and use to help push this mission forward in your own respective worlds, communities, domains. And so if you can leverage what they're putting out there, you don't have to go about reinventing the wheel. And that's something we strive to do at SpacePrize as well, as leveraging existing resources for our own efforts. Additionally, just last year, a major pledge was signed by a number of the top companies in the space sector. These are all of the CEOs, various executives from these companies that have made a commitment to ensuring that we make the industry more diverse. And so these are great folks to partner with. If you have your own organizations, your own objectives that you're trying to achieve in regards to DEI in space, these industry partners are willing and ready to come in and do what it takes to tackle this problem. So I'd absolutely recommend looking into this pledge, looking into the companies behind it, the people behind it, and seeing if there are any organizations that you can align with to push this mission forward, because we cannot all do this in a siloed environment. We have to come together if we have any chance of correcting the past wrongs and making the industry more inclusive. And this is also a fun resource that I actually made. I recently served as chair of the board of directors for the Space Frontier Foundation. And during my tenure there, we created a workbook, a set of resources, a toolkit, actually, that's what we called it, to help companies, startups, and such be able to be proactive in their STEM, in their DEI efforts. And so you guys can access that there if you want to learn more about specific actionable ways that you can go about making the industry more inclusive. And so I do want to introduce my colleague Miriam in just a second. So as I mentioned before, gender equity is a huge part of what we do at SpacePrize, promoting gender equity. But we also are all about promoting universal space literacy. And that's this notion of helping people to understand how space can be used to benefit life here down on Earth. And so we created this really fantastic free curriculum designed for middle and high school students to support their journey into the cosmos. And so I'll hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Mariam Sani, who is the education lead here at SpacePrize, to share a bit more about what our curriculum includes and how you guys can potentially use it in your own lives as individuals to support your own STEM outreach efforts. Countless ways this curriculum can be utilized.
Okay, hi everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is a fantastic conference, and my journey into space is, in a sense, thanks to Kim. I'm a chemist, I'm an educator, and I'm a STEMist through and through. My aim has always been to encourage girls to follow their passions, and it's been interesting to listen to the speakers today and their journeys and so on. And, you know, this idea of not having role models has stuck with me for a long time, especially as I grew up in an environment where I didn't have role models. So I was very keen and enthusiastic to be involved with SpacePrize, and particularly the SpacePrize curriculum. Having been a science teacher, I understand that, you know, we introduce space to children at a relatively young age. And for the most part, they're enthusiastic. It creates a spark in their lives. But then we don't do enough to continue that spark to flourish. So what I've noticed through some research that I've done is that it's largely when children get to an older age, when they're past teenage, almost even university or post-school, where they have the opportunities to then sort of rekindle that flame if it's still there. And one of our aims is to make sure that that flame never stops burning, and that we are able to provide resources, provide avenues in which girls and boys, but girls in particular with Space Prize, can then say, this is for me. You know, the curriculum is, I'd say it's almost like an encyclopedia. It's one of those things that you didn't know you needed it until it was there. It's so rich in resources, it's rich in links, it's rich in enabling everyone to feel that there is something for them in the space industry. You know, when we think about space and a curriculum, we tend to think of the history of space. Very rarely are people thinking about the economy of space. I'm speaking at a school level. The economy of space, the ethics of space, the future. Yes, there is conversations going on now about Mars and so on, but we need to bridge that gap whereby the children know that they can be an artist and be involved in the space industry. They need to know that there are people who are actually doing the same things that they would like to do. So what this curriculum does is essentially it's supposed to be a curriculum which would be perhaps a 12-week course, but it could be longer, and it could actually be used as separate modules. It consists of 8 modules. The 8 modules are why space, skills and mindset. So it's thinking about how we approach space and why. You know, it's an introduction to space science, the history of space exploration, the new space economy, space and sustainability. So the SDGs figure very strongly in this curriculum. Space governance and ethics, and the future implications. And I think even if you just listen to the topics that I've just mentioned, some of those would not normally be challenged or be addressed in a school situation or beyond. In fact, this is research-based, and we've also done quite a bit of user research since it's been available. And I've had students who are postgraduate students now saying that they wish they had this curriculum when they were about 13 years old, because at that point they didn't know about, for example, space law. And it's interesting because I'm new to space. Like I say, I'm a chemist, and Aya was the first person last year when I met her who spoke to me about being a space doctor. You know, so we're all learning, but I think that, you know, it's very important that we raise our voices, that we give these resources, and this resource is free. It's available online and it's free. The other thing about it is that it's not linked to any specific curriculum standards, which means that we expect that educators or parents, even individual children, will take it and use it as they wish. It contains additional reading, it contains so many links, like hundreds of live links. It has simulations, experiments, so many different ways in which it can be used by whoever the users are, you know. So we would like feedback as well, because it's evolving. As things change, we are developing it more. And we hope to have an app also where we can build more of a community and get feedback from the users, and also to promote the Space Prize. So one of the things, and I know I don't have very long, so one of the things that we will be doing is that with the Space Prize, we will be linking the contest questions to the curriculum in order for the contestants to get the background information that they need. I think the last thing I'll say is that we know that there's a lot of information out there. We know that a lot of people are doing a lot of fantastic work. But what this curriculum does, it brings together a lot of information from different sources, which would normally not be accessible just at the fingertip. So literally opening the book, going to the resources, you can see what's in each of the references, you can see the connections, what the videos are, and so on, and then decide what it is that you want to look at. I said that was the last thing, but it wasn't. Ambition and aspiration are two of the most important things when we come to choosing our careers. And in my own PhD research, I found that children as young as 4, and actually I'm one of them, they're already starting to think about their future. And for some of them, if those initial aspirations are nurtured, they do continue and go through with those careers. So the earlier that we can introduce children and show them that, yes, this is a possibility for you. Don't sort of rule it out before you've given it a chance. You know, the more opportunities we give to them, the more we will be enriching the